There's always noise. There's never a time you wake up and there's not noise. The headlines are always there.
You've saved, you've retired, and now you're wondering, okay, now what? For many retirees, especially women, the biggest questions aren't about savings, but about the logistics. How are taxes paid? Which account covers the bills? And what changes when there's no employer handling it for you? In this episode, we'll break down the must-know basics so you can enter retirement feeling confident, not more confused. Hello, and welcome to Money on Your Mind from Edelman Financial Engines. I'm Michael Leirsch, a behavioral scientist, financial planner, and your chief planning officer at EFE. Thanks for joining us for a conversation about how people are feeling about money, what they're wrestling with, and how financial planning can help you straighten things out. Today, we're talking with Glynis Banhan, an EFE financial planner. Glynis, welcome to Money on Your Mind.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for having me.
Well, we're so excited to have you here to talk through this topic. I know you've been a planner for over a decade. You've been with us at EFE. You've had a really amazing career journey to become a planner. And so why don't you share a little about that journey with our audience, and then tell our audience why you're so passionate about helping clients, especially at this time when they're retiring or in retirement, and there's all this complexity and you like to help them through that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey, and then why you like helping clients through that complexity?
Okay. All right. Like you said, Michael, I've been with Edelman Financial Engines for over 11 years now. I actually started on the service side before becoming a planner. So I've seen the opportunities. I've had the opportunity to see all the questions and concerns that our clients have throughout all their stages. And before Edelman Financial Engines, I was in retail. So my husband and I owned a retail store.
Oh my gosh, so a business owner, so you really know what complexity looks like. Got
Yes,
it.
sure. And honestly, I feel that business has helped me in this current role because it's almost the same. We help them through the tax questions, the healthcare questions, estate planning questions, and just get them set up comfortably so that they can enjoy the next chapter of their lives.
Wow. I mean, Glynis, there's a lot in this, so we should just get right into it. And you mentioned something really important, which is, now we're moving past, tax time, tax season, all the urgency around that, deadlines. And so now we can all take a bit of a breath and say, okay, how do we start actually then planning? Either if you kind of delayed that kind of component to October-ish, or you're planning for next year, it gives us a little bit of space here to manage through some of that complexity. So why don't you tell our listeners, our audience, what you're hearing about that's most confusing or feels most complex? Why don't you just share a little bit about that with everyone, and then we can just work through some of the solutions around that.
Okay. I think everybody knows around tax time, it just naturally triggers confusion, anxiety. Uh, but because people are wondering, all right, how much do I owe? How do I know how much I owe? Do I have to wait until I file before I know? How do I reduce my tax liabilities?
I like this idea of, tax season, kind of reflecting back. Were there any surprises? What were they? And let's make sure we manage that for next year. How about outside of taxes? What complexities are your clients bringing to you right now, who are kind of in this zone of retiring or in retirement, where they feel confused, maybe even upset about like what's going on, and how do you unpack that, like get that out of them, and ultimately create structure around some of that so they can make progress.
Mhm. So, a lot of people come in and they are thinking, all right, so I saved, it's time for my retirement. I'm confused. What actually happens now? And they're confused around, all right, my employer would give me a paycheck now. Who gives me the paycheck now? Which account do I take the paycheck out of? Who pays the taxes? Because that's something usually we don't have to think about. Um, Medicare, healthcare, my employer gives me healthcare. How much am I paying? What is the surcharge that people keep talking about? Roth conversions, RMDs.
Oh my gosh, my stress level's rising right now, Glynis.
So they come in with all of this bundle, and it's like, what am I supposed to be doing? And
Help me. Yes.
we just sit down and we just break it down and we go through everything. We start at the top. Where are you going to live? What state are you living in? Are we downsizing? Are we staying put? Who are we planning for? How much do we have that's going to be permanent income in retirement? And we just go through one step at a time and talk them through it until we put a full financial plan together for each person. And believe me, I see the stress level just melt away. Peace of mind is what we want for clients.
So I love this idea of peace of mind and just doing the hard work, working through it. When you think about the first thing, just so that all our listeners, our audience can understand, what the maybe the first or second things that you tend to work through are. What is that?
Well, the first thing is meeting with a professional. Choose someone that you can trust. And usually that's in that first meeting, that conversation, you know, all right, this person is somebody that I can talk to. And once that is established, the next thing we do is we start to put processes in place. Even if it's 2, 3, 5 years out from retirement, usually I can't stress it. People should seek advice at least 3 to 5 years out before retirement because it gets you prepared. What the meeting does, it shows you okay, you're on track, but it also can show you, no, you're not on track. It shows there's this red flag that we need to take care of, or there are different buckets that we need to be paying attention to. We have what we call our retirement bucket, the IRAs, or 401ks. We have after tax buckets. We want to look at all of that. So really, after that meeting where we've put a financial plan together, the next steps is what do we need to do in your particular situation. And that's also something that a planner can assist with in terms of getting you ready for retirement.
So I love this idea that what you're doing is you're taking the confusion and you're putting a structure around it. So when you're thinking about all of this, can you just tell us, why do you think people come without that structure? And you and I have chatted about this. We provide so much structure for like our kids, our grandkids, right? Emerging human beings, but
Yep.
adults sometimes skip that step. What do you think's going on there?
So we think we skipped a step, but we really don't. We have
Okay.
the structure because we're working, because we get up, we go to work, we come back, we eat, we
Ah,
exercise, we go to bed at a certain time because we have to get up at a certain time to go back to work. So we have the structure as well. And I think for when we're getting into retirement, that structure is now being dismantled and we have to create a new one. And I think that's where all the fear and stress comes around it because now we're going to have to do some stuff that our employers used to handle or our partners used to handle, but the partner also wasn't handling healthcare or insurance, or employer was. So it really, that's really where that friction comes in, or that stress comes around.
we know from data that men and women, partners, depending on what kind of, relationship you're in,
Right.
right? They handle these types of circumstances differently, emotionally,
Mm-hmm.
together. And so tell us a little bit about where you think this is particularly unique for women or females when they're managing through this complexity.
I think for women, we take on a lot of this stuff, and it affects us emotionally. So just not knowing, it can be like the biggest burden for females, and I see that. But as soon as they understand what's happening, because I think a lot of times they're thinking, I didn't go to school for this, I don't know all this stuff. But as soon as you break it down and they can see and understand what you're saying and realize, oh, then I can do this. That's when they feel confident, they feel empowered. They're like, all right, so I really can enjoy my retirement. I can go travel and not worry about this, as long as we get some structure around it and we know exactly step by step what we need to do.
Women and men do feel a bit differently. So women tend to feel more anxious
Hmm.
and concerned about whether they know enough. So that leans into exactly your, narrative here. Interestingly enough, men feel less so, but then after retirement, men tend to feel those feelings. So it's interesting. The feelings come, but just at
Hmm.
different times and maybe for different reasons. And that doesn't apply to generically all
Right,
men and
right.
women. These are just trends and tendencies. But it is
Yes.
interesting because to your point, it's less about being a man or a woman. It's about the circumstances of the partnership, the circumstances of how you've lived life,
Hmm.
and that's really what it's highlighting is that we all come to the table. And we just know men and women have different experiences in the United States. It's just factual.
Yeah.
We come to the table with those experiences, and that's why, to your point, the personalized advice is so critical here.
Right.
So, where do you think people are making the most mistakes? When they're going from, to your point, the work structure to this unstructured situation, having this bundle of confusion they're bringing to you. Where are most of the mistakes coming from?
Retiring without considering the tax liabilities.
Okay.
And I say that with thinking of what we call Roth conversions. Sometimes women will tend to retire a little earlier than either retire probably in their 50s and 60s.
Okay.
They think, I don't need my retirement money because there's other sources of income. And that beautiful opportunity window to do some Roth conversions before we get to what we call the required minimum distribution age. That's a missed opportunity, which I see over and over again. Of course, not everyone can do Roth conversions, which is probably a technical term. And I see when clients don't pay attention to that, or people don't pay much attention to that, you miss that beautiful opportunity to have saved yourself some money on taxes.
Like, what's causing the true miss of this opportunity in your mind?
The confusion, and there's a lot of information out there and it's all confusing. Well, I've seen a few clients, they read about it, they know about it, and they know they should take advantage of it, and they do it, but then they forget about the tax part of it, so they didn't pay the taxes, so you end up with a penalty. Just talk to somebody who knows how to do it, somebody you trust.
Glynis, I really appreciate you sharing that as a mistake because, to your point, there's the opportunity to do something. There's the inertia around it, but then there's the kind of mistake of trying to do it on your own, which can actually make things worse, not better, if you don't do it correctly. And so, really, the advice here is there's an opportunity, work with a professional to take advantage of that opportunity, but maybe it won't be advantageous to you. So, maybe there's nothing to do. And I
Exactly.
love that type of advice because going it alone sounds like, the quickest way to maybe not get it right
Yeah,
or to miss it.
exactly. Well said.
So when we get into then our final question here that we like to ask in the podcast, I'm really going to challenge you based on all of this because you're talking about a lot of complexity. Clients are dealing with confusion, but I want you to really think about the one thing that you think every single audience, member listening to this, listener should do right now? What is one thing they should do right now? Everyone listening.
Stay invested.
Stay invested. Okay. Well, tell me more about that, because there is a lot of noise out there, the
That's
conflict in
it.
Iran, right? Energy
Oh my
prices,
goodness.
potential recession, like all of it's in the air. So why would you say that?
You're exactly right, Michael. There's always noise. There's always noise. There's never a time you wake up and there's not noise. The headlines are always there. We don't know what's going to happen. You need your assets to keep growing. While you were working, they were growing. You still have, usually once you retire, you have 20, 30, 40 years in retirement. So that asset needs to keep growing. The markets had dropped, and clients who jumped out missed the recovery. So, we don't even have to go as far back as 2008. We just had it in 2020.
Yeah. Yes. And you and I, having been in this profession, uh, saw some clients make those types of decisions, and it's always then, well, when do I get back in?
Right.
When is the right time? And that's almost harder than the getting out
Yep.
decision.
Yep.
So,
Because now they usually get back in after the market's up, when these markets back being stable. So
so time in the markets, not great. Time in the markets, great.
yes, well said.
Awesome. Awesome, Glynis. Well, Glynis, thank you so much for being here on the podcast today. It was an absolute joy speaking with you. I know our listeners will benefit. Any last words before we close out the episode?
I just want to thank you, Michael, for having me. And I
Well,
really hope that clients will consider, or people will consider, getting help, the help they need to get through this period.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, Glynis. Everyone on this podcast who pays attention to it knows we're all passionate about advice and human advice. So I think that's extremely well said. So with that, that's everything we have for today. And this has been Money on Your Mind. A big thanks to financial planner Glynis Banhan for joining me. And we'll be back next Wednesday with a new episode. Subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube so you don't miss it. And we'd appreciate it if you left us a rating too. I'm Michael Leirsch from Edelman Financial Engines. Talk to you next time.